It was supposed to be the statement weekend, the one that silenced the whispers about whether Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari move had been a miscalculation. Instead, Budapest gave us the most jarring image of his Ferrari career so far. On a day when Charles Leclerc lit up the timing sheets and delivered Ferrari's first pole position of the 2025 season, Hamilton could do no better than 12th on the grid. And if the raw result wasn't enough, the words that followed cut even deeper. Hamilton didn't mask his frustration. He called himself useless, admitted the team might be better off replacing him, and hinted at background issues inside Maranello that weren't going away. For a seven-time world champion who arrived at Ferrari to cement his legacy, this wasn't just another bad weekend. It was the moment the dream turned fragile. The moment Hamilton, at 40 years old, looked more vulnerable than ever before. And the comparison everyone was too afraid to make suddenly became unavoidable. Sebastian Vettel, 2019, also at Ferrari, also looking like a stranger in a car built around Charles Leclerc's hands. That's the question hanging over Formula One right now. Is history repeating itself? Has Ferrari once again created a car that flatters while forcing even the greatest champions into uncomfortable compromises? Former Ferrari mechanic Francesco Cigarani thinks so. He sees the same pattern unfolding. Leclerc's preference for a free, unstable rear end. Vettel struggling to adapt and looking like a novice. And now Hamilton following the same path. His advice? Call Vettel. Learn from a man who lived this exact nightmare. But here's the twist. Italian reports suggest Hamilton isn't just copying Leclerc's settings and failing. He's gone in the opposite direction entirely, experimenting with shock absorbers, bars, and wing levels that Ferrari themselves call not optimal, which raises the bigger, more unsettling mystery. Is this really about setups and driving styles? Or is there something more systemic happening between Hamilton and Ferrari? When Hamilton signed a contract that would put him in Ferrari red, the narrative wrote itself. A seven-time world champion, the face of modern Formula One, taking on the ultimate challenge, reviving Ferrari and chasing glory where Alonso and Vettel had fallen short. But beneath the romance, there was always risk. Ferrari is not Mercedes. At Mercedes, Hamilton had built an empire around his driving style, his feedback, his way of doing things. At Ferrari, he was stepping into a house already defined by Charles Leclerc, a driver who had grown up in the system and who had weathered the ups and downs of cars that were quick on Saturday, but brittle on Sunday. For Hamilton, the transition was never going to be simple. At 40, he's attempting to unlearn habits that brought him 7 titles and rewire his instincts to suit a car that rewards a completely different philosophy. Alonso arrived in 2010 with the same dream. Leave Renault, conquer Maranello, bring Ferrari back to the top. 5 years later, he was gone, worn down by the internal battles and strategic blunders. Vettel followed in 2015, coming off 4 championships with Red Bull. But then came 2019. Leclerc joined, adapted instantly, and Vettel suddenly looked like the outsider. Now Hamilton finds himself at the same crossroads. At the heart of Hamilton's struggle is a setup philosophy clash that cuts deeper than most fans realize. Francesco Cigarani summed it up bluntly. Leclerc thrives with a car that's on a knife edge at the rear. A car that dances under braking and rotates aggressively into corners. Vettel tried to mimic that back in 2019, softening the front end and loosening the rear in search of Leclerc's feel. The result? He looked clumsy, overdriving, and constantly a step behind. But according to La Gazzetta dello Sport, Hamilton isn't simply shadowing Leclerc's direction. Instead, he's diverging wildly. While Leclerc has leaned into more conventional setup choices, stable shock absorbers, balance bars, and predictable wing levels, Hamilton has gone the other way, experimenting with aggressive anti-roll bar stiffness, unconventional shock settings, and extreme wing angles. Ferrari engineers have been left baffled, calling many of these configurations not optimal for the SF25's aerodynamic and suspension philosophy. In Budapest, it was nearly a full second between them in qualifying trim. The kind of delta you don't fix with a few tweaks overnight. For Ferrari's technical staff, The most surprising part of Hamilton's debut season hasn't been the lack of podiums or even the raw pace deficit to Leclerc. It's the sheer unpredictability of his setup direction. When Hamilton arrived, there was an expectation that his wealth of experience, nearly 2 decades of refining cars at McLaren and Mercedes, would help Ferrari's engineers create alignment between the two drivers. But what's unfolded has been closer to a philosophical rift. Leclerc pushes within Ferrari's established DNA, while Hamilton seems determined to carve out his own philosophy, introducing experiments that the engineers themselves describe as incompatible with the SF25's aerodynamic baseline. That split creates tension within Ferrari's race strategy department. With Leclerc, engineers can build models, predict tire degradation curves, and plan stints with consistency. With Hamilton, the variables multiply. Even Riccardo Adami, Hamilton's race engineer, and the same man who worked with Vettel during his Ferrari years, has found himself caught in the middle. Hamilton's relentless experimentation, while admirable in ambition, leaves less room for reliability.